I woke up with the taste of rust in my mouth. It was subtle at first, like the lingering memory of something metallic. But as I blinked into the dim light of my bedroom, the nausea came in waves. A dull, sour sickness that wrapped around the back of my throat and crept down into my chest. My tongue felt thick, my teeth dry, my hands shaking. It had happened again. That tea, always that tea. She said it helped me sleep. Chamomile and valerian. She'd whisper as she handed it to me, her voice sweet, soft, practiced. She never let me prepare it myself. "You shouldn't be near boiling water, Mr. Corrigan." Mr. Corrigan, not Elias. Never Elias. Names matter, you know. I spent a lifetime calling people by theirs. My students, my wife, my children. The way she said mine, it was clinical, convenient. The way you speak to a client, or a patient, or a problem. I hadn't asked for a live-in caregiver. I was managing. Slowly, yes, but steadily. I woke, made breakfast, fed the cat. I still read the paper every morning, folded in neat quarters like I had for decades. I wrote letters, I watered the garden. But after my last fall, my daughter insisted, and from across the country, wrapped in guilt and spreadsheets and children of her own, she sent me Sophia. Sophia arrived with a binder and a smile. She had credentials, references, and that unnerving confidence of someone who knows just how much power they're about to have over you. I told myself to be grateful. "She's here to help," my daughter had said. "She's vetted. You'll like her." At first I did. She was pleasant, efficient. She rearranged the kitchen and made me sit more often. She called the pharmacy before I could. She brought new towels, a stronger light bulb for the reading lamp, and cleared out expired cans from the pantry. I felt attended to. But over time, that attentiveness began to feel like surveillance. She moved too quietly. She read my mail before I did. She'd ask strange questions, seemingly innocent. "How old is this house again? You own it outright, right? Your son, he doesn't visit much, does he? Do you have a will?" I answered politely. Always politely. But I began to feel the edges of something cold beneath her warmth. Still, I said nothing, until the third time I woke up sick from her tea. That night, as I lay in bed, my ears strained for any sound. I heard the low hum of the refrigerator down the hall, the distant ticking of the old clock in the study, and something else, softer. Laughter. Not the forced kind she gave me during the day, but hushed, close, real. Then a voice. Hers. "He doesn't even notice," she said. "Honestly, it's kind of sad. He just stares at his books all day like he's waiting to forget who he is." A male voice responded. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was dismissive, confident, and that's when I realized someone was inside my house. I closed my eyes, kept my breathing slow and shallow. Let them believe I was asleep. Let them feel safe enough to talk freely. Because in that moment I knew this was not just about care anymore. Something else was happening. The next morning she was especially kind. Eggs with toast, fruit sliced neatly. She even wiped the edge of my plate. "Rough night?" she asked, her voice drenched in syrup. I nodded, letting my hand tremble slightly as I reached for the fork. "Didn't sleep much," I said. "Well," she smiled, "we'll get your meds sorted. Don't you worry." She always said that. Don't you worry. But I was worried. Not in the way she thought, though. I wasn't afraid for my health anymore. I was afraid for what I might uncover if I kept watching. And I was sure now. I had to keep watching. That night I poured the tea she gave me down the bathroom sink, watched it swirl down in thick golden spirals. I cleaned the cup, replaced it with plain water. Then I went to bed, eyes wide open. Let her think the sedatives were still working. Let her believe I was still hers to mold. I wasn't always like this, thin-skinned, slow-moving, staring out the window like a man waiting to dissolve. That's what she sees now when she looks at me. A frail old frame in a soft sweater. My eyes dulled by time, my voice uncertain. But I remember who I was, and the truth is, I am still that man, just slower to speak. I was a professor for nearly 40 years, history mostly, modern revolutions, post-war transitions, the fragile balance between idealism and decay. I lectured to halls packed with restless minds, many of whom now run cities, firms, courts. I wasn't famous, but I was respected. I knew how to hold a room, I knew how to read people, and I remember the moment that skill began to dull, not because I lost it, but because people stopped caring whether I had it or not. Aging doesn't steal your intelligence, it steals your witnesses. You can still think, still feel, still observe, but no one's listening. My wife Eleanor used to say I was the only man who could win an argument just by quoting someone older. You fight with Plato and walk away like it was your own idea, she'd laugh. She died on a Tuesday morning, quietly, still holding her knitting needles. We'd had tea that morning. She told me the azaleas were coming in late this year. Then she stood up to stretch, said her chest hurt, and that was it. No goodbyes, no ceremony, just silence. After that, the house became larger, not physically, but spiritually. The walls echoed more, the books stayed closed, my calendar lost its spine, and that's when the first offer came, assisted living. They said it like they were offering me a gift. You'll have people your age around, they said. There's chess clubs and bridge tournaments. But I didn't want bridge. I wanted my bridge. The one Eleanor and I used to walk across every Thursday to get to the old diner. I wanted the smell of her soap on the towels, the creak of the third stair, the way she folded the newspaper in half before bringing it to me. So I stayed. I aged in place. And yes, it got harder. The joints, the cold, the long stretches of days with no reason to speak aloud. And then, the fall. One cracked hip was all it took for my daughter to step in, and Sophia followed. Sophia is in her early 30s, I'd guess, attractive in that curated way young people are now, perfect hair, synthetic smile, sharp clothes. But beneath that smile, she always had a way of looking just past me as if I were slightly out of focus, like I was a task, not a man. She began to speak for me when others came. He gets confused sometimes. She cut off my phone calls when I lingered too long. You need to rest, Mr. Corrigan. She rationed my medications differently than the doctor prescribed, and still, I said nothing. Because when you're old, there's a particular kind of fear that settles deep in your bones. Not the fear of death, but of losing control before you get there. But now, as I sat in my armchair, watching the late winter light stretch across the parlor floor, I felt something stir inside me. Resolve. It wasn't dramatic. I didn't pound my fist or declare anything out loud. I simply picked up a pen. Not for writing poetry or reflections, not for nostalgia, for documentation. Each movement, each phrase she used, every inconsistency, every whisper I heard behind closed doors, I logged them, like an old war correspondent, gathering facts before the front collapses. That night, she brought me tea again. I took it with both hands, nodded, smiled. I even thanked her. Then I waited until she left and poured it straight into the potted fern behind the bookshelf. The leaves turned yellow by morning. She'll never see me coming. Not because I'm clever, but because she's convinced I'm already gone. The first thing to disappear was the electric bill. For 20 years, I kept all my monthly statements in a filing cabinet in the study. Labeled, ordered, dated by hand. The drawers were my paper spine. Even after Eleanor passed, I kept the habit alive. Some routines are sacred, not because they matter, but because they're mine. Then, one afternoon, I went to retrieve the last 2 statements. The folder was there, the paper clips were there, but February and March, gone. When I asked Sophia, she smiled too quickly. "Oh, maybe you filed them somewhere else by mistake, Mr. Corrigan. Don't worry. I can call the company for you." I never asked her to do that. I never needed her to, but I nodded. That was mistake number one. Next came the calls I didn't make. Twice I received callbacks from doctors' offices I hadn't visited in years. A neurologist, a long-term care center. "We're following up on your recent inquiry, sir. You or someone from your household reached out?" Someone from my household. I hadn't spoken to a medical office since last autumn. The only person with access to my phone besides me was Sophia. I confronted her gently. "Oh, that. I was just helping your daughter. She asked me to look into some options, just in case." I called my daughter later that night. It went straight to voicemail. Then came the stories, little inventions, offered to neighbors and delivery men and the pharmacist who dropped by every third Wednesday. I could hear her from the kitchen, her voice dropping just low enough that it sounded private, but never low enough that I couldn't catch the words. "He's been having episodes. Sweet man, but so confused lately. He told me the same story 3 times yesterday. I think he's slipping." I hadn't told the same story 3 times, not even once. But I said nothing, because now I wasn't reacting. I was recording. Every morning I wrote it all down in the same old notebook I used to mark term papers in, the one with a cracked leather cover and a university crest barely visible beneath decades of wear. Tuesday, 11:14 a.m. Mail was opened before I got to it. A letter from the bank, Wednesday, 9:07 a.m. Phone ringing, Sophia answers quickly in the hall. I hear the word power of attorney. Thursday, 8:35 p.m. Found one of my old checkbooks in the kitchen drawer, not where I keep it. Bit by bit, the pattern began to reveal itself. She wasn't just inconveniencing me, she was isolating me. Every time she refilled a prescription without asking, every time she accidentally unplugged the internet, every time she stepped in to answer for me on the phone, she was pulling the world farther away, so that one day when she needed me to sign something, no one would be there to ask why. I began hiding backup copies of my accounts, USB drives, old keys, documents. I slipped one into the spine of a fake book on the top shelf of my library, another behind a loose tile in the bathroom cabinet. I may walk with a cane, but I still remember every inch of this house. And this house still remembers me. One night I noticed her in the study. She thought I was asleep. She was at my desk, not using the computer, but holding my old family album, not flipping through it, just staring at one photo. Eleanor and I on the front steps, 1978, her hand on my knee. My head turned toward her, laughing. When I cleared my throat in the doorway, Sophia didn't jump. She just closed the album and said, "You had a beautiful life, Mr. Corrigan." Not have. Had. It was in that moment that I understood the full shape of her plan. She wasn't rushing. She was waiting for me to fade just enough for no one to believe me. And when that day came, she would take everything. But I had taught too many students about the collapse of empires to miss the pattern of a quiet coup, and now I was preparing for mine. I began to speak more slowly, not because I was tired, but because I wanted her to believe I was. I let my voice trail off in the middle of sentences. I stared too long at the calendar. I forgot the names of neighbors I remembered perfectly. I let her correct me, let her feel clever, let her feel in control, because predators like Sophia need to believe they've already won. It relaxes them, makes them sloppy, and that's when you start to win. I bought a cheap voice recorder, not one of those modern things that connect to phones or clouds, just an old-school microcassette device. I ordered it through a friend who runs a second-hand electronics shop downtown. He's one of the few people I still trust. I placed the recorder behind the row of mystery novels on my bookshelf, where Sophia always stood when she took her personal calls. It clicked on with a simple button. She never noticed. Then I bought 2 more. One went under the kitchen table, another inside the vent in my study. By the end of that week, I had dozens of hours of audio, fragments, phrases, moments she thought belonged to her. But they were mine now. She was talking to someone regularly. A man. Voice like gravel, impatient. "Has he signed yet?" "No," Sophia would whisper. "But soon. He doesn't even question me anymore." Another clip. "You'll have to come by again. He barely noticed the last time." That was the night someone rifled through my desk drawer. I had placed a folded piece of blank paper inside with a single dog hair taped to the edge. When I checked the next morning, the hair was gone. She'd opened it. The following Monday, she brought me a new medication, a different bottle, different shape. "The doctor updated your dosage," she said. "Which doctor?" I asked casually. She blinked. Dr. Morales, the one from last month." "There is no Dr. Morales. My physician, Dr. Ahmed, had not seen me in over 6 weeks." I took the bottle, smiled, and placed it on my nightstand. The pills were unmarked, no label, no prescription. That evening I dropped them in the toilet, all of them. I knew then it wasn't just financial. She was testing thresholds, how much sedation I could take, how passive I might become. There's a kind of evil that doesn't come with rage. It comes with patience. Sophia was waiting for me to become silent in a way that wasn't strategic. But I am a man of archives, of evidence, of timing. The next move was mine. I wrote an email, carefully worded, with no panic, no accusations, just observation. I sent it to Patricia Lang, one of my brightest former students, now an elder law attorney. Subject line: "A legal curiosity I'd like your thoughts on." She replied in less than 3 hours. "Tell me everything." We met the following afternoon at a local cafe. I wore my oldest coat and shuffled in slowly, drawing as little attention as possible. She came in quietly, sat across from me, and opened her laptop. I slid a USB drive across the table. She listened. Her face changed, but she never interrupted. At the end of the hour, she said only 2 words: "I believe you." That night, I sat in my favorite chair by the window. Sophia brought me my tea. I took it in both hands, smiled like always. Then I set it down without drinking. "Would you mind bringing me my journal?" I asked. "Of course," she said, leaving the room. And I whispered, to no one in particular, "They always forget the silent ones." It started with a brochure, a glossy, overly cheerful pamphlet on assisted living facilities left conspicuously on the kitchen counter. Bright colors, smiling elderly couples playing cards, slogans like "Live your golden years stress-free." She didn't say a word about it, just left it there. Twice. I moved it to the trash both times. The third time it reappeared in my study. This time open to a page titled, "When It's Time to Let Go of Responsibility." She was getting impatient. A few days later, Sophia began to narrate everything I did aloud. "Sit down now, that's good. You're remembering your pills today, well done, like I was 5 years old, or in 78 and fading." I played along, shuffled slower, let my hands tremble a little more. The thing about humiliation is, if you treat it like theater, it can't reach your heart, and I had decided this was a performance, hers and mine. One morning she brought a guest, a man in a navy suit with a red folder under his arm. Thin hair, expensive watch, the kind of man who sells lies with mild cologne and firm handshakes. "This is Mr. Glazer," Sophia chirped. "He's here to help us with some end-of-life planning, just a few documents, nothing to worry about." Glazer. Of course, The name matched one I had heard whispered into her phone 2 weeks earlier. "He'll get the paperwork done discreetly." I invited him in, offered tea, watched him sweat. He opened the red folder and began explaining legal terms with patronizing slowness. "Just a few signatures here, Mr. Corrigan. This is a basic power of attorney, giving Sophia the ability to help manage your affairs should anything happen. It's very standard. Many seniors—" "May I read it first?" I asked, interrupting. Glazer blinked. Of course. Take your time." He slid the document across the table. I picked it up, adjusted my glasses, and read slowly. Every line. It wasn't standard. It gave Sophia sweeping financial authority, immediate and without restrictions. The type of control only given when someone is comatose or entirely incapacitated. It even included a clause allowing her to act as my healthcare proxy, overriding my own decisions if deemed mentally unfit. There was no diagnosis attached, no doctor's signature, no family consent, just 2 blank lines waiting for my name. I set the document down. "I'll need a night to think," I said gently. Sophia's lips thinned, but she smiled. "Of course, Mr. Corrigan, take your time, no pressure." But there was pressure. The next day, the tea was sweeter. The accidental mixing of pills resumed. She began locking my phone in a drawer at night for safety. I smiled through it all, because I already knew the document would never be signed. And because that very night, I met with Patricia again, this time in my own home. We reviewed everything, the documents, the audio, the pattern of behavior. Patricia made calls, quiet ones, to the right people, 2 officers, a forensic specialist, a judge, quiet wheels turning slowly but surely, and we prepared a performance of our own. That week, I began writing letters by hand again. Dozens of them, to old colleagues, former students, distant family, not dramatic, not desperate, just small updates, stories, gentle mentions that I was getting help sorting through some confusing legal matters. I mailed everyone, a net of awareness, a safety line of attention. She had worked so hard to isolate me, and now I was quietly reconnecting myself to the world. When she returned with Glazer 3 days later, she was beaming. "I made your favorite tea," she said, placing the cup beside me. "I think we're ready today, don't you?" I nodded. Glazer pulled out the red folder. Sophia stood behind him, hand on his shoulder, eyes locked on me with that glittering confidence she'd worn from the start. Let her believe it. Let her think I was finally hers. Because in just a few more days, the curtain would fall. They arrived on a Wednesday, not with flashing lights or drawn weapons, just a soft knock at the door like any other visitor. Patricia entered first, dressed in her grey courtroom suit, clipboard in hand. Behind her were 2 plainclothes officers, quiet, professional, observant. Sophia was in the kitchen, humming. The tea was already steeping. I sat in my armchair just as we planned, pretending not to notice the arrival of justice. "Mr. Corrigan," Patricia said warmly, loud enough for her to hear, "do you mind if we go over a few things before I file the paperwork?" Sophia's footsteps froze in the hallway. What's going on?" she asked, suddenly appearing in the doorway. "Just a legal review," Patricia replied, calm and practiced. "It's important that Mr. Corrigan fully understands the documents you asked him to sign." Sophia laughed, too loudly. "Of course, no problem. I'm just here to help." The male officer stepped forward and gently asked, "May we all sit down together? We'd like to ask you both a few questions." Sophia hesitated. She looked at me. I met her gaze fully and clearly, for the first time in weeks, not with fear, not with confusion, but with memory and presence, and she knew. Patricia opened her briefcase. Inside was a tablet. She tapped the screen, and then we listened. Sophia's voice from the bookshelf recorder. "He's barely coherent. The bank thinks I'm his niece. We'll transfer it once he signs." From the vent in the study, The new pills will keep him under. I just need one signature. From the kitchen table. He asked about the power of attorney again. I told him not to worry. He'll forget by morning anyway. Every clip, every word, crystal clear. Sophia's skin went pale. "Wait," she stammered. He's old. He records things. That's illegal. This is entrapment." Patricia raised an eyebrow. "Actually, it's not. This is his home, and he had reason to believe he was being manipulated." The officers didn't speak. They just moved, methodically, respectfully. One pulled out a printed warrant. Another retrieved the documents Sophia had tried to make me sign. The forged ones, the unlicensed medications in her bag, the financial statements she'd attempted to redirect to a new address. It was all there. The trap had closed. "I never meant to hurt him," she said suddenly, her voice trembling. I looked at her. "No," I said quietly. "You meant to erase me. And for a while you almost did." She was escorted out without cuffs. That was my request. No public display, no humiliation, just consequences. Let her face the silence she'd tried to create for me. Let her sit in a room alone and listen to her own voice on tape. After they left, Patricia sat beside me. Neither of us spoke for a while. Finally, she said, "You know, not many people would have had the patience or the clarity." I smiled. "History teaches us that the strongest revenge is the kind that doesn't look like revenge." She nodded. "It looks like truth." That night I brewed my own tea, mint and honey, nothing added, nothing stolen. I drank it slowly by the open window, the cool air curling in like an old friend. And for the first time in months, I slept without dreaming of doors left unlocked. The silence returned. But it was different now. Not the heavy, muffled quiet that settled in after Eleanor passed. Not the suffocating hush of Sophia's presence, where every sound felt monitored, every step rehearsed. No, this was an honest silence. The kind that belongs to a house when it's finally safe again. It came in the mornings first, birdsong through the open kitchen window, the kettle's low whistle, the soft creak of the wood beneath my slippers as I made my way down the hallway, alone, unassisted, and fully awake. The tea was my own now. The pills were mine again. I had reclaimed the smallest details of life, and somehow those were the victories that mattered most. I returned to my garden on a Thursday. Winter had finally loosened its grip. The soil was still stiff, but the air had softened. I brought out Eleanor's old trowel, its handle worn smooth by her hands, and began loosening the beds. It hurt. My back ached, my knees stiffened, but I kept digging. 1 foot of cleared earth, then 2, and then, beneath the frozen leaves and wind-crushed petals, I found the base of our rose bush, still alive, still holding on. I let my hand rest on the stem. "You waited for me," I whispered. Some things do. Inside, I began rearranging the house, not drastically, just undoing. I moved the bookshelf she used to block the window, rehung the family photographs in the hallway, brought Eleanor's quilt back to the bed, repaired the old reading lamp in the study. It wasn't about comfort. It was about memory. About reminding this place who I am. One afternoon, I opened a drawer I hadn't touched in over a year. Inside was a stack of old letters, Eleanor's handwriting on each envelope, small and precise. One of them hadn't been opened, postmarked the day before her last breath. My fingers shook, not with weakness but with reverence. I unfolded it slowly. "If you're reading this, it means I've already gone. And if you've let someone else into the house, please, my love, don't let them take your silence for surrender. You've always been strongest when you waited. Use that." I pressed the letter to my chest and closed my eyes. She had known. The next week I asked Patricia to help me draft a new will, tighter, clearer, ironclad. Not because I fear dying, but because I now understand the slow theft of aging comes not from the body, but from people who think your body means your mind is gone, and I won't allow that again. The neighbors began to wave more often. One even brought a pie, and my daughter, bless her, finally flew in. She cried at the airport, cried again in the kitchen, apologized over and over, as if tears could patch years. I didn't scold her, I just said, "Next time ask about the tea." She laughed through her tears. I forgave her with my eyes. The house is quieter now, but it speaks again. The floor creaks with honesty, the windows breathe, and sometimes at night I walk into the hallway and speak my name aloud, just to hear it echo through my home again. Elias, still mine, always was. Growing old is not the tragedy. Being erased while you're still breathing, that is the true violence of time. People think aging makes you softer, slower, simpler, but that's just the surface. Underneath, the years harden you in strange ways. They strip away the distractions. They leave only what matters and what haunts you. For me, what mattered was the truth, and what haunted me was how close I came to losing it. Sophia didn't rob me of money, not fully. She didn't succeed in taking the house. She didn't steal the furniture or the title or the land Eleanor and I built our life upon. What she tried to steal was my narrative. She tried to make me a blank page, one she could write on as she pleased. Confused, dependent, harmless. But I was never harmless. I was quiet. There's a difference. And silence is often mistaken for surrender, especially in the elderly. They assume that because we pause before speaking, we've forgotten. That because we don't argue, we've agreed. That because we're alone, we're powerless. They are wrong. You see, I never wanted revenge. Not really. I wanted to be heard again. I wanted to look someone in the eyes and say, "I remember, I see what you're doing, I still exist." Because the greatest cruelty of what she did wasn't the forged documents or the tampered pills. It was the daily erosion of identity. The "you're confused." The "you told me that already." The "you don't need to worry about that anymore." Every one of those sentences was a chisel to the stone of who I am until I started carving back. So here is what I leave for you. Anyone listening, anyone reading, anyone who feels their world shrinking with each passing year, document everything. Trust your memory. Do not accept crazy as a label just because someone else is louder than you. You are still in there. Your instincts are not relics, and your silence is not the same as weakness. You are the living archive of everything you've survived. Don't let anyone rewrite you. The recordings are stored, the legal papers are sealed, the garden is growing again. I sit now in a house that once nearly forgot me, but now breathes my name with every creak of wood and gust of wind through the window, not because I fought with fists, but because I fought with memory. And if you've ever been made to feel invisible, if someone tried to rewrite your story while you were still here to tell it, please share it, say it aloud, leave it below. Because your voice, no matter how old, might be the thing that saves someone else from silence.